Prime Minister Narendra Modi will return to power for a historic third time, but his party, the BJP, won't be governing alone.
Hundreds of millions of eligible voters handed his party and its allies a substantially reduced mandate.
The party's performance appears to have fallen well short of expectation.
Narendra Modi's party failed to secure an outright majority, though, for the first time in a decade. What does this represent to you?
The BJP secured a third consecutive term in power, though with a smaller than expected majority. Critics argue that the opposition faced an uneven playing field, contending with the judiciary and government bodies that had been weakened or influenced. Agencies were used to intimidate and undermine opposition leaders and parties. And to top it all, the media landscape is dominated by news outlets that blindly applaud and overly favor the ruling party, often exhibiting low to no journalistic integrity.
Namaste sada vatsale matrabhu.
The BJP is part of a larger network of organizations that share common ideology centered around Hindutva, a concept advocating for Hindu cultural dominance. BJP is the most prominent face of this Hindu right that includes more than 30 loosely affiliated organizations, one of which is the RSS.
The RSS is a paramilitary organization that was founded in 1925. It was founded by a guy named K.B. Hedgewar, and he was really concerned about what he saw as Muslim-initiated violence against Hindus. And if you remember that 1925 is a really tumultuous time in India. This is kind of the heart of the anti-colonial movement, and it's also right around the time that Gandhi begins Satyagraha movement. What's interesting about the RSS is that they start out as essentially an anti-Muslim organization, and they grow into this organization that purports to defend Hindu way of life. Hindu culture, Hedgewar wrote actually this, that Hindu culture is the life breath of Hindustan. And it's therefore clear that Hindustan is to be protected. We should first nurture the Hindu culture, and it is the duty of every Hindu to do so. He wrote this in part because he saw this movement as a movement to protect Hindus. And this was a big fear, right? Like you see this coming out. And so the movement itself was always militant, but it was seen as a protective movement. And the successor to Hedgewar is where we start to see the advent of fascism. That's Golwalkar, right? Golwalkar succeeds him as the head in 1940, and he's widely recognized as the ideological architect of the Sangh as we understand it today. And Golwalkar was incredibly fascinated by Hitler, and he really, in particular, was fascinated by ethno-nationalist movements that centered a particular ethnicity as the heart of a nation. And he wrote, to keep up the purity of its race and culture, Germany shocked the world by her purging of the country of its Semitic races, the Jews. Race pride at its highest has been manifested here, a good lesson for us in Hindustan. He drew inspiration from the idea of an ethno-nationalist state that was for one group of people, right? And he saw, more importantly, that violence against people who didn't fit into that group was perfectly justified. He was also inspired by Italian fascism, particularly Mussolini's organization of fascist paramilitary forces. But again, he saw that as necessary violence, as a violence that was needed to protect the Hindu people. So the common thread is that this is all about positioning Hindus as perennially victims. They are always being threatened, and they need somebody to stand up for them. Hindutva does that, right? The Sangh does that. So these founding members of the RSS were ultimately influenced by not only fascism in Italy, but Hitler as well. And they defend a version of Hinduism that is commensurate with Hindutva goals, a Hinduism for upper caste, upper class, cosmopolitan Hindus that are invested in a flattened, non-diverse, particular vision of Hinduism. What we call this is political monotheism. This is a kind of Hinduism that the RSS promotes that is very much commensurate with conservative Abrahamic faith groups that are also invested in a particular kind of, conversion politics, a particular kind of flattening of the tradition, right? Because diversity is the enemy. Part of the appeal of fascism is that it was a populist movement. And populism profits from people feeling like they're part of something that is bigger than themselves. And this is what fascism did. This is what Mussolini was able to do. Fascism needs a figurehead, somebody who is a larger than life personality. In the US, we had Trump, right? You see somebody like Jair Bolsonaro in Brazil. And in India, we have Modi. But in history, we had Hitler and we had Mussolini. In particular, fascism, we had Mussolini. What's appealing about fascism is that people feel that they are connected to the person that is leading the movement, and they feel like they are part of something bigger. That is what's appealing. This is, at its core, make India great again. There was a greatness to India that Modi has brought back, right? And that they can believe in it and they can be part of it, more importantly. It's not a movement for just the elite. It's a movement for everyone. And that's not to say we could get into how fascism benefits particular kinds of elite members, the Adanis and the Ambanis of the world. Absolutely, we can talk about that. But really, what at its core, why is it appealing? It's appealing because it's directed at their everyday lives. Modi's saying, you don't like corruption. I'm going to make it better. Do you want an India you can be proud of? I'm going to give that to you. Do you want an India where you can be proud and open about being Hindu? I'm going to give that to you. This mirrors what you hear from people like Bolsonaro, what you hear from people like Mussolini in history, what you hear from people like Trump.
We have a great country. That's my thoughts.
It is not a movement about just them, but it's a movement about all of them.
We were nationalists, we are nationalists, and we will remain nationalists.
I think that nationalist movements at their core are always about bringing people together for a larger cause. That in and of itself is not bad necessarily. What's bad about Hindu nationalism today is that it's created a situation in which one group of people gets to profit from the fruits of that labor. One group of people is being privileged in a multicultural, pluralistic, multi-religious society. The problem with Hindu nationalism is that it's really a movement for Hindus. It's really a movement to create a Hindu nation. In a Hindu nation, can we have Muslims?
ये संपत्ति इकट्ठी करके किसको बांटेंगे? जिनके ज्यादा बच्चे हैं उनको बांटेंगे। घुसपैठियों को बांटेंगे। क्या आपकी मेहनत की कमाई का पैसा घुसपैठियों को दिया जाएगा?
In a Hindu nation, can we have Christians? In a Hindu nation, can we even have Dalits? What does that look like? And I think that part of the appeal of this is the fact that Hindus feel like they finally have something that belongs to them. But the downside of that is that in order for them to have this thing that belongs to them, a lot of other people have to be either eliminated or relegated to a second-class position.
Hinduism is the way. I'm a hardcore Hindu nationalist. It's awesome what Modi is doing. I support the killing of the Muslims and the Sikhs in the Republic of India because they deserve to die.
Jai Shri Ram.
Jai Shri Ram is a call to violence. It's either a call that violence is going to happen or a violence has happened and likely has happened against Muslims. This is what it means now. What do we understand when we hear Jai Shri Ram? We now think somebody is going to get hurt.
बोल जय श्री राम एक बात कर जय श्री राम बोल जय श्री राम बोल जय श्री राम बोल जय श्री राम जय श्री राम एक और बार जय श्री राम जय श्री राम.
You know, you have a lot of unemployed people that are looking for work, and this is, you know, when unemployed people are sitting around, you know, they're sort of looking for something to do. And India right now has a lot of unemployed youth, and that's partly what you see as being drawn into these, you know, parades and mob-like violence. Beyond just being a sort of, you know, battle cry, I think it also reflects a broader ethos about a particular vision of Hinduism. Rama represents a Rajya Hinduism, a particular kind of upper caste, upper class Hinduism. And not just Rama, and it's not just any Rama, it's one Rama. Not the 300 Ramas that A.K. Ramanujan talks about, right? As we know, ABVP, you know, went and got that article removed from the JNU's curriculum. And I think it's really telling. It's not the Rama that Romila Thapar writes about. This is a particular kind of Rama that the government sees as supporting their values, right? Their values. And I think that, so it's, to me, it's more than a battle cry. It represents the heart of Hindutva ideology, and it represents the heart of the political Hinduism that they seek to promote. And every time that somebody chants Jai Shri Ram, or even, you know, we can talk about the Hanuman stickers that appear everywhere, right? These are like what we would call metonyms, right? They stand in for a broader whole. And that broader whole is a particular kind of politicized Hinduism that has no room for alternative Sita Ramayanas or Ramayanas where Shurpanaka is a hero. Fixed categories. Rama's the hero, Ravana's the villain, not only belies the original story, right? It sort of allows a particular kind of valency to be assigned to Jai Shri Ram. Whenever people hear it, now they understand not only that battle cry, but they also understand that this is the dominant Hinduism. This is the Hinduism that has to stay. This is the Hinduism that's here to protect real Hindus. This is what they're trying to convey, I think, to their allies. And I think to people that they're trying to intimidate, they're trying to say, don't come in here with an alternative reading. Don't come in here with an alternative. You yourself don't fit into this space. So it's also a cry of erasure. It's a cry of, right, of this particular kind of ethos of that political Hinduism.
हिंदू राष्ट्र बहुत बड़ा स्वप्न है, वीर सावरकर का स्वप्न है, शिवाजी का स्वप्न है.
Hindutva is a political ideology. Hinduism is a religion. And they are often confused because Hindutva uses the language of Hinduism in promoting its politics. Hindutva believes in a particular vision of Hinduism that they believe is the true Hinduism, that they see themselves as defending. Hindutva is a political ideology that profits from a kind of nativist Hinduism, and it seeks to present itself as a true Hinduism, and it's an ideology that's about 100 years old. But it is important to say that Hindutva is not Hinduism. Right? The word itself translates to Hindu-ness, but it's not found in any language. It's what we call a neologism. So it's sort of created, is what that means. And it refers to the idea that in any inhabitant of India, except for Muslims and Christians, are somehow Hindu culturally. And its founders, right, were envisioned India as a homeland for Hindus, right, in which all inhabitants were culturally Hindu, regardless of their religious background. And I think the important part here is that not so much that Hindutva and Hinduism get confused, but that Hindutvavadis, particularly those in the current age, are really invested in promoting Hindutva as the real Hinduism, as a true Hinduism, as a protective Hinduism, as a decolonial Hinduism. And I think that's really important. Of course, people who are Hindu, and Hinduism is diverse and contradictory and encompasses a number of regions, all of that diversity and let's call it pluralism, right, is flattened for this particular political Hinduism that Hindutva promotes.
Hindu Rashtra घोषित होने वाला है।
जो भी मेरे हिंदुत्व के प्रति आंख उठा कर देखेगा, उसकी गर्दन काट दूंगा।
For Hindutva, the ideology says that this is a land and a homeland for Hindus, by Hindus, for Hindus, right? What they see is a threat.
सब हिंदू अपने हाथ में हथियार उठा लो और कह दो हम सब हिंदू एक हैं
कि यदि धर्म बचेगा तो ही देश बचेगा नहीं तो सिर्फ अवशेष बचेगा.
And so secularism becomes a place that diminishes that power of majority.
Democracy delivers and democracy empowers.
And that is partly what the goal is. The goal is to create an ethno-nationalist state that remains a democracy for those who support such an endeavor, but for all those that are not part of that movement, they become either second-class citizens or they're eliminated or they leave.
Gauri Lankesh fell victim to this Hindutva political ideology. She was a vocal left-wing journalist operating in an India that has become one of the world's most dangerous landscapes for dissenting reporters. Since the rise of the BJP in 2014, a far-right Hindu nationalist party, the nation has undergone a transformation. Through alliance with loosely affiliated extremist organizations, divisive propaganda, and influence over media outlet that unabashedly spread their message, the BJP has solidified its control over public discourse. As a result, radicalism has infiltrated every section of society, with the state aggressively indoctrinating a vast population promoting Hindu nationalism and normalizing far-right, polarized and divisive ideology. All of this is driven by a narrow vision of a sectarian India.
The ideology and the ideologues like to present Hindutva as simply representing Hindus or representing or protecting Hindus. But what we see here is a Hindu, a woman who said that this is not my Hinduism, and she was murdered for it, right? She was seen as a Hindu hater because she said, this is not my dharma. You know, what you're doing is wrong, right? And that, I think, is really at the core of the kinds of, free speech issues that Hindutva is against, I should say.
Before Gauri Lankesh was assassinated for speaking out against rising communalism in India, M.M. Kulbargi, a social activist, was killed for challenging orthodox beliefs. Before him, Govind Pansare, a prominent left-wing activist, faced a similar fate for his progressive activism. Narendra Dabolkar, known for his rationalist views, was also victim to violence. All four, including Gauri Lankesh, bravely opposed Hindutva ideologies, advocating for pluralism and an inclusive Indian society.
I see Gauri Lankesh as a victim of what happens when an authoritarian government begins to define what constitutes a true religion, which is partly what happened here, right? So she couldn't speak out. People that are rationalists, we saw this with the Bhim Koregan incidents as well. The exact sort of same, ideology. People, it doesn't matter what tradition you're part of. Anything that doesn't fit the vision is ultimately not just free speech or different speech anymore. It's something that is seen as a threat. And it's not just a threat to Hindutva, because Hindutva is being equated with India. So then you become not just anti-Hindutva, anti-Hindu, you become what? An anti-national.
In your eyes, 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 I can see your unfinished story. I realize, I realize that somebody didn't want your voice free. It's going to cost us this false democracy. They'll try and crush us. They cannot hush us. Your words, your legacy. Too many of us. Go find a ditch, control that itch. Let's kill the bitch, erase the hitch. The girl's a glitch. Don't let her speak, she'll make it churn. Can't let it leak, she'll have to burn. That's how they'll learn. That's how they'll learn. That's how they'll learn. In your eyes.